I just tell you, I get this brochure and I'm going, this guy's actually good looking. Presidential candidate you've been waiting for. A fine and brave U.S. Air Force aviator, Major David Stuckenberg, is running for president to protect the powerless. He has a vision, purpose, and principles, and I fully endorse him. That was signed Ambassador R. James Woolsey, 16th Director of the CIA. I mean, he's got the big hitters endorsing here. He has an adorable family. I read about him and vetted him out. He's here tonight. I met him, and my opening comment was, where you been? You're a little bit late. But is he here tonight? And let's get him on the mic. Impressive.
Thank you for a very warm welcome, and thank you for letting me come and be a part of this. This is democracy happening tonight. I want to bring a very sober message because I've already represented all of you as constituents for 21 years. I'm considered one of the foremost national security experts in the United States, and I've been serving you at the Pentagon, the Joint Staff, at the United States Special Operations Command. I've been serving our 29 NATO allies. I've worked at the State Department, and I have watched in astonishment, little by little, as our freedom is given away. Tonight, as I stand here, I am here not as a politician, but as the shield and defender for your nation, just as I have been for 21 years. Those are my 2 children, and I have 3 more where they came from. 5 total, and they're my why. Tonight, as I stand here in the United States, the eagle is in the mouth of the dragon. And you have all seen it. You can see the hero's welcome for America's prime enemy that has declared it will overcome the United States by 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party. Ladies and gentlemen, we have not won a war game since 2008. We are beat. And I have had my hands on the one war plan that can win. And we have set to undermine it immediately. This contest, this presidential election, it has everything to do with the survival and the continuance of this republic. On November 8th, I announced candidacy because of a conversation that I had with my son in my yard. And I'm going to share that conversation with you. It's deeply personal. I've told you I'm not a politician, and I mean it. I am the least self-interested person that you may have ever seen hold office or run for office, because I have seen over the hill and I have seen what is coming, and it is terrifying. Our nation's leaders, our politicians, have not given our military the authority or the wherewithal to protect us. At the time and place of our enemies choosing, they could defeat the United States that quick. And I and others who have stood on the wall as the guardians and sentries of this nation have implored them, our generals, our politicians, and our former presidents, to protect this nation. And they have sold away our future, compromise by compromise, increment by increment. We are 15 years into a war that is below the threshold of war. This is called the gray zone, and I may be one of the only people in the world with a PhD on this topic. We are being aggressed in the area of diplomacy, information, our military, our economy, and our society and social. If I were to paint a checkerboard on that wall with 400 squares, each square representing an area of competition, from economy to the number of ports to Mandarin-speaking teachers being exported from China, the whole wall would be red, with a couple of squares representing green for the United States of America. We have implored our national leadership to take this matter in hand, and our window is closing. We are running out of time. This election is the turning point for the United States. We can move back to a government that is by and for the people. When we elect one of us for all of us. I grew up on a farm and I grew up poor, but America gave me opportunity. And I soared in the military and I soared in small business. And today I have a small business with more than 25 employees that is successfully creating water machines to provide water for the water scarce areas of the world. When the military wants a problem solved, they bring David Stuckenberg because I'm a systems thinker and I'm willing to tackle the hardest problems. And right now we have 3 things that we have to do immediately. Number 1, within 72 hours of my taking office, U.S. Northcom will muster troops and send federal troops to the north and south border and seal it. We will stop the flow of fentanyl and people across those borders. And then you're asking, why 72 hours? I've got to muster troops and I've got to drive them there. Number 2, we have 8 million question marks in this country right now, and we do not know what they represent. We have to know who they are. We're going to give a 60-day period to allow every person to let us know who they are. If they're part of a drug trafficking, if they're part of a human sex trafficking, if they're held as a slave, there are going to be multiple ways that they can let us know who they are. They can drop a piece of paper in at the post office, they can drop it in an offering plate at a church, they can tell their doctor. We have to stop, we have to know, and then we have to decide. On the decide, everything is earned and nothing given, sir. I respect you. Thank you for being an American. Every freedom-loving person in the world has 2 homelands, their own and the United States of America. We are the last bastion of freedom. If we fall to communism, the world will fall. Reagan said that the time of choosing was in his day, but I believe it's in ours. We are at a point where we can no longer fiddle around with politics as usual. It will destroy our nation. We have to have the experience and the leadership to bring together the American people and to no longer amplify our differences, but to get together on our common ground. If you agree with me 90%, then you're 90% my friend, right? You're not my enemy. And for too long, we have allowed wedge issues to alienate our ability to work together. And the American people are losing faith in our Constitution and in our ability to function as a republic. And some have even considered throwing away the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, that document is inspired, and it is fundamentally sound. It is the character of those who have been administrating that document that is flawed, and that must be corrected. Some say, Dave, you're late to the race. And I'll share a quick story with you, and then I'll give the mic back. On September 11th, my son and I were working in the yard. I was 4 months behind on my yard. And he's 18, he's the oldest. And I said, Timothy, do you understand what happened on 9/11? He said, yes, Dad, I've seen it in the shows and in the movies and the documentaries. I said, do you know the story of John O'Neill? He said, no. John O'Neill was the lead agent for the FBI's terrorism task force. He knew Osama bin Laden had targeted the World Trade Centers, and he knew he wouldn't stop until he knocked him down. John O'Neill went to the FBI and he said, please give me the resources to stop what's coming next. And the FBI said, John, why don't you retire? It's been good having you. Okay, you're saying, well, Dave, where's the punchline? John O'Neill retired, but instead of crawling under a rock, he climbed to the top of the World Trade Center, and he took up, as a hero, the burden of responsibility of protecting our nation. He died on 9/11. And I asked my son, I said, Timothy, what would John O'Neill do if he could come back and speak to us? He said, Dad, he'd say, if there was even the smallest and most remote chance of success, you fight for America and you never let her go. Because the razor's edge has made the difference, and it's been what kept us here. PBS later did a documentary on John O'Neill. It was called The Man Who Knew. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the man who knows. But unlike John O'Neill, I know what to do. There's no time for the next president to get spun up. There's no time for the next president to say, I'm going to build you a 600 ship Navy, when I'm the guy that tells you you can't even build a 600 ship Navy. You don't even have the naval yards. You don't even have the tools to create the tools. You don't even have the ammunition to last a war more than 14 days. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 priorities that we have to establish immediately. These can be done within the first 24 months of office. Number 1, we're going to build the most powerful national security enterprise since the Cold War, second to none. A new grand strategy called prevention. We will prevent the United States as the torchbearer of freedom worldwide from being overcome. Number 2, we're going to solve illegal immigration. We're going to stop. We're going to know who's here, and then we're going to decide in a just and fair way who may remain, and some will go home. And finally, we are going to create a roaring economy by starting with 33% across the board tax cuts for every tax bracket. Now, some might say, Dave, that's a little aggressive. And I'm going to tell you that under Reagan's tax cuts at 28%, the tax revenue of the United States almost doubled within 3 years. Why? Because people like me who have small businesses and people like you who work for a living can reinvest, can hire employees, can grow their companies, can save more, can spend more. And that is the engine of our economy. And that GDP, is our national security. This is a decision time for us. There's no more time to do politics. Edward Gibbon, in 1700, who was the author who wrote about the decline and the fall of the Roman Empire, he left us with this word: having ripened to the principle of decay, and temporized to the incursions on the borders of the Gaelic tribes, and having succumbed to internal fighting, Rome tore away into the great fabric of its own weight. That does not have to be our future. I believe our best days are ahead. But that is going to depend on the leadership that we elect. And the Constitution, thank God, has invested within us that just power to decide. Thank you for your consideration.